Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is your AstroShaman, Pernell Bobby. All right, we are generating an economy of harmony, leveraging human design and genetic astrology. Today is actually more of a personal story, a question that I was asked about how did I get into astrology? How did I decide to make money from astrology? I didn't decide it, just to give you the early answer up front. Um, stepping into I'm just reading this question off, stepping into the entrepreneurial journey in general. Of course, it's dependent on the effort that I put in for the potential earnings, but it's most of my money made through YouTube, or is it taking viewers off YouTube onto other platforms / memberships, i.e. Patreon, my astrology membership, consultation readings. And this is coming from a Saturn in Aries person. So, step one, I'm thirsty. I should have did that beforehand. Let's get y'all some water. Let's get me some water. All right. Cool. So, six years ago is really where it started. I think 6 to 7. I was working for this startup company. I saw a major opportunity. I was like second in line behind one guy who was like going to be there was an investor, there's an owner. Well, no, there's an investor and the owner, and then there's an employee who had this he had this scorpionic, this is actually here. He had this scorpionic presence that made him feel like he owned the entire investment, even though he was in the debt of the investor. So that power, honestly, is one of the early energies behind me as a triple Aries. I am a Scorpio rising. I had no idea about any of my astrology placements at the time, but I really liked the power. I love the power watching this guy be in this position. He was buying himself a home. He was buying himself BMWs. It was just like he seemed to have it all externally. And so I just sat by and watched and learned. And so how did I get into this space? It was one, sitting, watching, and learning. Even outside of that guy, it was taking on mentors in Atlanta, all over the world, Tony Robbins at a point. And so what started the journey, so I don't get too far off the question. Yeah, what started the journey was just taking on a bunch of mentors, literally taking on a bunch of false prophets. And that's I hate to say it like that, but it's also the truth. Like I've learned under a lot of people who extended their outward image further than their internal development. And so the irony is I brought that external image because this is what I thought I wanted on an internal level to develop. And the irony was it did that for me. It did that for me. So a lot of that was unconscious. A lot of that was an unconscious pursuit of power. The irony of power for me was this internal grip on my being, on who I am, on literally being who and what I am. And so that was achieved, not in the way I thought, but this was in the space of exercise. I went to university to be an exercise physiologist. I had no idea how that was going to play out. All I knew was what I didn't want to do. I didn't want to be a physical therapist. I didn't want to be occupational therapist. I didn't want to be anybody working in a hospital. I didn't want to be anybody working with people one-on-one. It just felt wrong. It felt like a waste of my talent. It felt like a waste of my life space to work with anybody one-on-one in this exercise space. And that one-on-one eventually came with astrology, now this is also 6 years later, astrology, human design readings, all of that, where I offer it, but if you notice, I don't promote it very often. Forgive me, y'all. I'm on vacation, so this is just a. Just think it is a story time, okay? You can hit the thumbs up in the meanwhile, though. I appreciate you for that thumbs up. I promise I'll get there. Okay. Wow. So, napkin. So if I fast forward a little bit, I knew that this guy was gonna burn out. This guy at this company 6 years ago, I watched it. I was like, it was amazing to watch. It was incredible to see what he was doing, how he was managing the power, literally all this Scorpionic stuff. I rolled my dice and I actually have Scorpio and the sun, and this guy was a Scorpio sun, so this is the story I'm supposed to tell you today. And it's in the 6th house, the work. The actual work every day that we do. Virgo. And I'm telling you, this guy had so much power, he had so much influence over the people. People believed he was somebody that he wasn't. They put so much, they gave him so much power. They literally gave him so much faith. This is the prime example of like Scorpio and what is possible. What's possible with the Scorpio. So mind you, I'm watching the Scorpio and I'm a Scorpio rising. Little that I know about astrology at the point. And so I wanted that. If I'm being honest, I wanted that. I was like, I want everyone to see me like this. I want everyone to treat me like this. I want everyone to give me things. People were just giving him things. It was just the craziest thing ever. Like, because I'm watching this guy, not knowing about my Scorpionic eyes, I'm watching this guy and I'm like, this guy's a phony. And I say this with no disrespect because it's not just him. I met a lot of people like this. I met a lot of people who I allowed to mentor me without even their knowing. I chose my mentors to be my mentors. And I didn't say, hey, can you be my mentor? I just shadowed them. A lot of people. A lot of people whose names, like, it's not even worth mentioning. But people you know. People that you will know. You'll know these people. You watch them. You watch them on TV. You watch them on the internet. You watch them everywhere. And power was the key word. So I didn't begin because of money. I can promise you that. Like, I've never cared about money. I've just always been this person where something inside of me has always known that, like, financially, life will be taken care of for me. I've had phases where I went into these conditioned patterns where I started thinking, well, what am I going to do? How am I going to financially do this? Yada, yada, yada. And it never lasted long, but it did cripple me at some points of my career, especially in the entrepreneurial space. It did cripple me. Some of those conditionings did. And that crippling only showed me how much I didn't need money to be powerful. Power was more of my, the hope, if you will. I wanted power, and it's just the simplicity. And so I faced a lot of power struggles along the journey that showed me as well, like, what true power was. And true power in this day and age turned to be more about being gentle, being calm, being able to remain calm, even in the face of financial matters, even in the face of what the hell am I going to do in this entrepreneurial journey? How will I survive? The US dollar is crashing right now. I'm in foreign currencies where, like, I'm like, look, I recognize, wow, it's costing me $130 extra to take the same amount out of the bank. But to remain calm in those matters and realize we're good. To be vulnerable is power. To share this story with you right now. There's a story that I don't tell. I don't think I've ever told this story. I'm curious of how deep it'll go. Bear with me. Hit the thumbs up. So, eventually this guy did burn himself out. So the prediction came true. He burnt himself out, and I'm standing there hot and ready. Got that call that I was expecting. And that call was, yo, P, are you ready to take the reins from the investor? And I'm sitting here like, hell yeah, I'm ready to take the reins. I put myself in this position to take the reins. This is always a part of the plan. I just needed an opportunity, and the opportunity presented itself. Now, when it did, the expectation failed. The expectation was not met. That investor learned from that scenario, and he was like, I'm not going to give this next guy's the reign because I just saw what happened. I didn't anticipate this. So I was put in this co-ruler position, kind of like Aries and Scorpio and Mars. Literally, it was funny, right? Where neither one had more or less power, where in certain instances one might be more powerful. In other instances, it was clear who was more powerful in this co-leadership role. And I just really, quite frankly, self-proclaimed myself in this position. I was like, look, I'm not going to let this discourage me. I should literally be, even the numbers, the statistics were showing that I'm the guy. And I put myself there mentally. So I stayed the guy. And even a part of being the guy, I realized, one, I didn't make that much more money. So that was a bust. But I didn't want the money, so it was okay from that standpoint. I'm like, okay, I'm not really in it for the money. I want it for the power. I want it for the influence. I want it for the people. You know, being praised by the people. And if I look at it, this is me as a 5-1 generator, right? As a heretic. This is me as a heretic. Okay? The general leading, you know, the influence of the people was more powerful for me. But I still wanted the money. So I had deadlines to hit. I hit these deadlines. I had numbers to hit. I hit these numbers, and that ended up allowing me to start collecting a percentage off of the total P&Ls, profit and loss, if you will. So in the time frame, like, how did I get into entrepreneurship? One, I started learning about what the hell is a P&L, what is a profit and loss statement. I started learning what does it take to be more efficient, because I got the company in debt. And so I couldn't start collecting my percentage until I got the company out of debt. So what did I do? I found my hustle. I was like, Operation Get Us Out of Debt. And then that happened in like 6 months. And it was like, holy crap. And that within itself gave me power, being able to watch what was possible. Like, did I just do that? Like, we're tens of thousands of dollars in debt. And somehow, as soon as I got the company, we're out of that debt. Seemingly something that couldn't happen prior, at least of how it was told to me. I only have what I have, right? At the end of the day, I'm still an employee. I'm not the owner, I'm not the investor. So, how did I get into astrology? I promise I'm getting there. Hit the thumbs up. How I got into astrology is learning how to run a business. How to run a business. How to run a business. How to, if opportunities were given to me, if I was, in a sense, being funded, so what this is turned into is, in this physical reality, I'm being funded by an investor. And then that experience was like, okay, well, what if spirit becomes my investor? And I didn't know any of this at the time. But eventually, that's what it was teaching me. It was teaching me that spirit is my greatest investment. That spirit's always going to have my back. My guides are always going to have my back. The opportunities are going to be given to me. I just need to be prepared and ready for when they come. And that was the same thing that happened with this investor. Now, I say this as well in human design, I understand, like, I have a hope motivation, right? And so it's like, when I transfer into guilt, where it's like, I got to be the one to solve. I got to be the one to save myself, right? And guilt. But it's like, that's not my motivation. That's my transference. I got to be the one to recognize humanity's problems and go ahead and solve that problem after I realize, like, I'm the key to that problem in the first place. The hope is very different for me. It's like, to be able to witness all of that and not transfer into that and try to save people. So if I look in this instance, you know, I got this text message about blah, blah, blah. Notice I'm talking to you, the general people, in this story format, in response, as a generator, in response to a crisis. Because all of us, whether we become an entrepreneur or not, it's a crisis. In all sincerity, your job is not safe. Any mental security that any of you listening have built, that you have a secure job, let this story be proof. Now, again, I was at a startup company, so, you know, there's always some risk. involved when you talk startups. But at the end of the day, it's like that company's flourished. That company flourished. We started with one location. Before I left, we had 4. By the time I got fired, we had 5. Sorry, I was asked to withdraw, and I signed that paper immediately. I took one look back, and I was like, it's that easy. Okay, it's that easy. And I withdrew. Legality stuff, right? So my point is, I witnessed myself able to put up, while there, 4, and the 5th was already in the making. And I'm like, wow, holy crap. Each one of these people running these location facilities, I'm getting transported to train them all. And I just recognized that I had a formula. And the biggest part of the formula was faith, trust. Literally, that opportunities like this will continue to reform for me. So being asked to withdraw, I won't lie, I was bitter as hell. I was frustrated. And the frustration with me as a generator, I was already not being my authentic self, right? So the authentic self is my hope, motivation would have been, look, the hope that like I'm taken care of, which I was. So I had a competitor confront me, but by then I already knew I would never work for anybody ever again. In my mind, it was already set. This competitor confronted me while I was with this company, and they tried to take me. And I was like, no, my loyalties lie here. And it's just who I've always been. So many different times my loyalties have put me in awkward situations, I won't lie. Cause I just grew up with this OG mentality of like, yo, that's your clique, that's your gang. You don't betray them, point blank, period. And so eventually what happened, these experiences taught me that my loyalties lie with myself. So that competitor that confronted me, I was like, hey, look, is that opportunity still on the table? Okay, let's meet. Great. I put my portfolio together. I then secure the highest dollar that I've ever made in my life. At least on a salary type hourly wage, something where I set the terms. Ironically, I stayed in that company and was fired in about 3 weeks. Because again, like I said, my loyalties at that point, when I realized how easy it was for this startup company to cut me out, I realized like nothing is safe. And that just was this clear understanding early. So I was like, look, I'm running my own entrepreneurship country. And that was the mindset even while I was at the company. Eventually, they recognized they had a threat. They were like, look, this guy has no loyalties to us. And they were correct. Because at that point, the power, it already got to me. I've already tasted it. And it was like, I can't go back. There's no way. I can't go back. I've licked what felt like true power. And at the time, quite frankly, it wasn't. But it was enough to get my ass moving. Oh, wow, I'm sweating. Ooh, I'm sweating. It's hot as hell. Yeah. I don't know why I choose vacation spots. I mean, I needed the water. It's nice. I can see the water from here. It's so beautiful. Okay, so let me come back. What do the people need to hear? How did I get into astrology? Okay, all of that matters. I promise. So from that time frame, this competitor confronted me, but I already began to think I need to be able to work online, and I want to travel the world. It's what I was hoping that the startup company was going to offer. When they asked, it was like, what do you want? And I was like, can we get a location in California? And I was in Connecticut at the time. I was like, can we get a location in California? He was like, yes. And I was like, great. I got what I want. We can expand. Okay, I'm already seeing the possibilities. Because when I was first asked that, we still had one location. So for us to be able to put up 4 in a year's time frame, I was like, we're going to get this Cali location. I'm going to secure one of my dreams. So I'm going to workhorse this. And I put all my generator energy into it. So by then, I figured out a community formula. If I'm being honest, that's what it was all about. I figured out a community formula. I was like, look, I know how to create a community. And I know how to do it rapidly. Rapid growth. And that's what happened. So obviously that dream didn't come true, and California didn't happen with them. And I realized I needed to take life by my own hands, because this is never going to be secure. I started understanding the mindset of millionaires. I was around so many millionaires at the time. Even the clientele, like so many of them had houses, homes, cars. It was just like opportunities, jobs, like the whole area. I was like, man, 15 minutes that way, people are dying. And I'm 15 minutes on this side of the border, and people are flourishing. It was just mind-boggling to me. I was like, is this serious? Like, do y'all even know that this dude got shot in the head? I'll spare you the rest of the details. Whatever. So I just recognize this gap, and I recognize it came down to a choice. Like, we have a choice to make. This economic gap, this wealth gap, this opportunity gap. And I was like, I'm going to choose my own gap side. And getting fired from that job, the one I made the most money from after the competitor that came to pick me up, I was like, I could do this. I could do this. And so then from there, I spent 7 days in the library. I'm talking all day. The only time I left was when I went to go take on my third part-time job, bartending. So it hits the point where I'm one-on-one training people in exercise by myself. I'm bartending on the side. Any extra time went into the library. That's it. I was in the library. I didn't even go to university at that time. I was in my university library on my sister's keywords and logins every single day, trying to build out a curriculum, a personal development curriculum, something that would allow me to teach people these personal development tactics and lessons and life lessons. That's literally one of the programs that it was called. It was called Life Lessons. My company is called the Institute of Life. Most of you won't see that, but ingrained, it's the Institute of Life. And I created Life Lessons at the time, and this is about 6 to 5 years ago. And started off with just a group of 8 people. And I was like, how can I make this economical for each person and still get my needs met? That allows me to travel. And that happened. And maybe it was about 8 people. It took me about a year to build all that out, to get a bartending license in the meanwhile. And I moved to California. So I ran that group of 8 while being in California, delivering pizza. I came with an East Coast mentality, and all those pothead California boys was not ready. I was like, look, I'm taking up all this money. I'm driving fast. I'm running stop signs. I'm getting it done. And I'm just straight like that. Straight like that. And ironically, delivering pizza in California is a very lucrative fucking opportunity. Excuse my language. It's very lucrative. It's ridiculous. Like, what? So from there, I knew, like, look, I gotta get better. And eventually, I found a job, actually, ironically, again, back in a pizza place. But this was like pizza and wine. And so, bills are like $150, and they're in and out in 20 minutes. And now you're taking that percentage on top of that. I did well. I took those extra earnings, and I was like, okay, I'm going to take my little group, personal development, I'm going to take my earnings, and I moved to Thailand. It was literally that simple. I found a round trip ticket for $400. I went there for 2 weeks to Thailand, to Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, and somewhere else. I forget. I don't even know where else. And I was like, this is it. I came back to California. 2 days later, I'm pretty sure I quit my job. I bought a ticket 2 days later, back to Thailand, one way. I want one ticket to New York to go see my family, and from New York, I went to Thailand, and that was it. I mean, I was in Asia for the next 2 to 3 years. 2 years. And in that time frame, astrology still didn't come. Human design did, but the Aquarius within me was like, everybody's doing this mainstream, at least in Asia. All the Europeans and all the people, expats, were doing human design, 3 or 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago now. It was just craze. in Bali. I was living in Bali, and it was just crazy. And that I came across it. I came across Gene Keys, exactly what I'm doing now. This is the irony, ladies and gentlemen. And I looked at it a little bit. I liked Gene Keys, but I really didn't dive into it because, again, mainstream. So Aquarius in me was like, nah. Little did I know I would come back. While I'm there, essentially Asia kicks me out. Literally the country, the energy, everything was like, look, your time is done. So I'm like, what? I had a prophecy of meeting my wife, actually. And the prophecy led me to Colombia, which is where I then went for another year and a half or so, Medellin. I only met illusions. But in the meanwhile, I had my shamanic death. And I say exactly that. This is years ago still. This is still 2 years ago from now or so, along the whole journey of what I started with 6 or 7 years ago. I had my shamanic death. The Icaros came through me, spoke through me, moved me. For those of you who don't know, the Icaros it's a plant. It's the plant medicine that people associate with ayahuasca, but I've never taken ayahuasca. I've never taken any plant medicine other than marijuana. And even now, I don't smoke. And I mean, it killed me. I won't lie to you, I died. I remember, I literally died. I died. I died and was resuscitated. Literal scorpionic death. And when that happened, my main man was there, and he was like, you know what this means, right? And I was like, in and out of consciousness. I'm like looking at him, and I'm like literally on the floor like a baby. Apparently I passed out like 5-6 times. I have no recollection of it. I just remember my body moving and contorting in ways that it couldn't. I was an exercise physiologist, so I knew enough about the human anatomy of what it could do and what it couldn't do, and it did everything it could not do, and that broke every form of logic within me. And I realized, okay, I can't run from how much more there is to the world than this 3D physical reality, because I broke all 3D physical laws in this dimension. And I'm like, that's not possible. But obviously it was. And so that was my shamanic rebirth, and I had no idea what the hell that meant at the time frame, if I'm being honest, but I did, somewhere at a deep soul level. And it was actually before the shamanic death that I had a death prior, which wasn't necessarily a shamanic death, but it was an ego death. And you can find that video on here somewhere. You'll get reference points of my ego death. I never talked about the shamanic one online. Quite frankly, most of it was just way too crazy to talk about online. I felt like they'd pull me into a psychiatric ward. Oh, man. And so, 2020, quarantine hits. I lose everything. By the way, even that 8 group of clients, as soon as I got to Asia, I lost them. I lost the whole group. The whole group was gone. All payments stopped. I didn't make money for months. 3-4 months minimum. I remember the first piece of change I made for $15 training somebody. $15 US, which got me 30 meals. That was my plan. I was like, okay, this $15 I can eat 30 times. So I ate for a month. Training somebody once, a German woman, for like an hour in a park. And I lost that $15. And again, it just went into another part of my experience, boss, of how much money does not matter. Like, money has no value. It has the value we assign to it. There's some basic needs, sure, but it showed me how basic our actual needs are. So no money coming in. I panicked. This is that time frame I told you a little earlier. Like, I definitely panicked. I was like, what the hell am I going to do? And that panic was showing me my conditioning around money. Because the truth is, like, most authentic to me, I just don't give a fuck about money. like I'm telling you, the best I can explain this is I have a Sagittarius second house. Like, I am a Scorpio rising. In my Sag second house, I just very hopeful around my bank account, around money. Like, windfalls happen, big gains, big loss, very speculative kind of energy, Just always taking a gamble, and the gamble is on life. life, 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 life. Me living life is the gamble. And when I do it in accordance to what feels right, things just work. So again, whoever you all listening, understand that that's me. Like this story can only be used, my personal preference, as perspective, not what you should do or not do. So don't look at it like that. So I'm gonna answer this gentleman's questions. 2020 hit, the quarantine. Sometime before I got to Colombia, I did pick up 2 one-on-one clients. And these are longer term, 3 to 4 months. And it, one, from a financial level, it really saved me because as much as I don't care about money, I was like, I also have none. Like, at the same time, I was like, I also have none. I was living with a partner at the time. We broke up in the relationship. I had to go off get my own apartment. I got my apartment, and eventually I gave the apartment up. Got jumped by a freaking tribe, and I'm talking 100 deep in Bali, and that was crazy. And then another guy gave me his apartment for 10 days that helped me figure out my life and get on my feet. But I was awarded an apartment. Like I can't predict that, right? Like I can't, God's not like, oh yeah, by the way, if you take this risk, I'm going to give you 10 days of an absolute silent Vipassana for yourself. A lot of what I'm doing right now here, I mean, if my birthday just passed and I came here to take a Vipassana, it's very quiet. There's maybe 1,000 people in this goddamn village. Like no one's here. The energy is quiet. And it's helped me understand how many thoughts are mine and how many thoughts are not mine, because I'm still a 5 line. The amount of projections that come onto me is absolutely insane. It's ungodly at times. It's inhumane, if you will. So whatever. Point being, because I didn't want you to think that there was no work at all for years, because that's not true. There were a couple one-on-one clients that, the thing is, again, I have a hope motivation when the way my arrow goes, it goes inward left. If you know human design, it's like opportunities come to me. It's not for me to go seek them. So that was a lot of the deconditioning along the way, that I needed to seek clientele. No, I need to wait. Like this video right now, I was waiting all morning. All I did was just sit there and lay in bed with no energy. And I'm saying it as a generator, no energy. I got this question, and now I'm here talking to you. Literally, I got sparked. I'm like, oh God, I get to tell a story. And I get so excited about that because I don't always get to tell a story. So this is a rejoice moment for me. So 2020 hits. I took a world tour prior. Italy, Morocco, Colombia, Medellin, New York, and I don't know where else. And I was promoting a book. It was called Objective Empathy. And that was like my next big idea that came to me. And in some ways, to the public, it's never come out. So to the public, it feels like it was a bust. But in reality, that book was really more of my deep shadow work. Writing that book was my deep shadow work, which is also why it's never come out. It was like, it was for me. And I didn't know that at the time. And so, whatever, the tour still took me on experiences. I met people all over, so many different cultures, so many different countries. I had an opportunity to stay in Italy. The quarantine hit in Italy. And it's funny because I was in Wuhan, China prior. I know I'm a little off topic, but I'm trying to give you some preference and also bring the concept together. How did astrology come? And again, this is crisis moment where I was in Wuhan, China. I was then in Italy. The same times that the COVID outbreak was what it was. And I'm watching people terrified, but the true power was in that moment. I was just staying calm, silent. And I watched everyone panic around me, and I was like, huh, interesting. And it just felt so familiar. Past life type stuff. It was like, wow, I've seen this crisis so many times. I've seen pandemics so many times. I've seen epidemics so many times. So many lives. And I didn't have that shaman awakening yet, or that ego death. Neither one. while this is happening. And so I get to Colombia. I didn't even know they were going to let me in because I was like, yo, if they check my passport, they're going to see I was in freaking China and they're going to see I was in Italy. Are they going to let me in? And thankfully, I had a passport agent that really didn't give a fluck. Because there was this other guy, I was like, please don't let me get this guy because he's not going to let me in. I knew it. And I got this one woman who she didn't even check. She just said, bop, and then let me go. So I get into the country, and now I get locked down in Colombia. The world shuts down. It's 2020. We all know how that was. And I was lost. I was like, man, everything that I've tried, which is now years, it seems to had just not been. And I realized I was chasing opportunities, and I wasn't living in my design. I wasn't letting opportunities come to me. I was chasing opportunities. I wasn't responding to them in moments of crisis, which ultimately created crisis for me personally. So at this point, life was just like, you're done. And how did I get to astrology? 10 days or so before the quarantine hit in Colombia, I took DMT for the first time. This Canadian guy came through. And nature became so present with me, or other way around, I became so present with nature. And I like started to strip. I'm not kidding. I was like in this botanical garden. I took off as much clothes as I could, put my feet in the grass and the dirt, and it grounded me and it held me and it kept me warm. And these trees are, eventually I lay on a bench, and these trees, I feel like a real hippie, literally, I'm not kidding. And it's like, this is like a thing for me, because I'm like, okay. And the trees open up, and then I swear to God, God's voice comes. Just trees, they're waving at first, and then eventually open. And God was like, they're ready to listen, son. Come off the bench. And I'm like, what? And that was the message. I swear to God, it spoke to me so clear. They're ready to listen, son. Come off the bench. And so this is about years, because it still took another year and a half, 2 years from that point, where I just hit like my rock bottom, like nothing worked. And sometime very shortly after that, I had a friend of mine, a good friend from high school, and she was talking about astrology on the internet. And something about Chiron and Aries, and all I knew was I was in Aries, and I asked her, I felt drawn to her. I was like, what is Chiron and Aries? And I booked a reading from her. It's the first reading I booked in astrology ever. She talked to me about my Chiron and Aries, sent me some documents, yada, yada, yada. And from there, I got obsessed. Now, I'm a 5-1 generator. The 1 is the investigator. I just began investigating without blinking. First off, I'm in a quarantine. I got nothing to do. I'm in a country where I don't speak Spanish, and no one speaks English. All the foreigners that were there, I was in a place where there maybe been about 14 foreigners from freaking Finland and all these other countries, Belgium, all the Europeans, Germany, and they all fled. They were like, we got to get out of here, because they felt like it was going to be totalitarianism, whatever. They thought it was going to turn into an anarch state. Everybody had Pablo Escobar in their mind and like, oh my God, we're all going to die. Because the first couple of days, they had helicopters coming over. Everybody stay in your home. And we're all like, what the hell? And people left. And I was just like, I'm going to stay still. Because it just seems stupid to leave. It seemed stupid to do anything. It felt like I should be still. So I stayed still. I stayed still long enough where everybody was gone except for one German guy named Andre, who eventually gave me a tattoo that goes down the entire spine of my back. It took 3 to 4 days to do. And so from there, what I'm saying is astrology came to me. And as it came to me, I began to remember that I've been an astrologer through almost every one of my lifetimes. And it's why the information came to me so easily. Literally, it was my Saturn return when the quarantine started in 2020. You know, it was my Saturn return. And at this point now, my Saturn return is done. And my Saturn is in Aquarius. third house. So this is my language. Astrology, Aquarius, third house. This is my language. Now let's actually answer his questions. How did I begin making money as an astrologer? So as I learned astrology, I started taking readings in Spanish. I was learning Spanish and astrology at the same time, and I literally learned loving astrology so much is what made me do the extra work and extra hours to translate astrology into Spanish. And I actually remember telling him this journey once about at least the Spanish part, because no one spoke English. So I had to learn Spanish. Even though it was my intention anyways, I was not forced to it. And now I got to do it with astrology, which I loved. Very quickly, I loved it very quickly. I was obsessed. Absolutely obsessed. Couldn't get me to put the books down. Couldn't get me to stop researching. I watched so many videos. Eventually, those videos I watched and those astrologers I watched on the internet became people that I eventually did collaborations with in these later days. And that was just a whole nother level of magnificent. Like, oh my God, I used to watch these people. And they reminded me of my past lives. So the reading started very simple. I think it was like $25 at first. Then eventually they were $44, and then they were $88. Then they were $144. Then they were $288. Then some were $348. And then eventually I realized, like, okay, I could make money from this. This is great. I am making money from this. This is great. But I need more people to know this, because I felt a higher calling to it. I was like, look, this language needs to be accessible to everyone. And it is a language. Astrologos is a language. The language of the stars. The language of the gods. Because the stars were the gods at one point. They still are in some cultures. And that's where it brought me back to everything I told you in the beginning of my stories around community. And what I felt was truth power. True power is the people. And whatever influence you have with the people. Keyword with, not over. With the people. AKA in exchange. Scorpio. And let's look at his questions. A lot of people do book from YouTube. A crap ton of people book from YouTube. Most of my streaming of clientele comes through YouTube. So yes, it doesn't come through YouTube monetaries like ads and people donating on live streams and stuff like that. That's just like a residual income that really does nothing. I mean, there's no dent. I don't think my channel is nowhere near big enough to make enough money to just make money from just ads. A lot of people do book one-on-ones. They're there. Like I said, I don't ever really promote them, because at one point I did, and you know what? I did get clientele, but it was just like, I just realized that again, you know, I only want the people who feel a call, a true call, because at this point, at this time and age, it's like astrology can't be about money for me. It just can't. Like, it can't. And I told you why already. So a lot do come through one-on-one. I have made a significant amount of change doing longer term, which I don't really do much anymore. I feel like it creates too much of a dependency. Like, I'm talking longer term, like 6-month clientele, 3-month clientele on some kind of retainer. I have done this. I don't like the dependency it creates, and I don't like the power it takes away from people. So that's something where only the right mentee. I took it all off my site. So you used to be able to book something like that. Like, you have to talk to me. Like, at this point, it's just not happening. Yeah, it really has to be the right mentee. It has to be somebody like God sends me, and that has to be clear to me and clear to them. Um, but it was a phase, and it did make some change at some times. Um, let me see. Memberships. Well, I have a membership. Um, this is one of the best ways I think it could be affordable to everyone. Um, and it's the learning environment that I enjoy the most. So, again, this was a message given to me. It was like, Pernell, this is the way you go. And I was like, I'm scared. And they were like, don't be. Here's why. And the why is everything I told you in this message. I've been doing communities all my life. You know, so many of the things in between that I haven't talked about is how many retreats I've ran for free, just being in hostels, taking together foreigners from 6 to 7 different countries and saying, hey, let's do this 4-day social experiment. And that has happened a lot. People from Portugal, people from Canada, people from New York, Jersey, the list goes on. So many Germans. I mean, the Germans are everywhere. The Germans, the Belgians, they're everywhere. They're all over the world. Um, and so the key thing is like, you know, what's that thing that you're willing to do for free? And it's like, what I've always been willing to do for free is to commune with other people. And so eventually now this is where something, it has become a residual income. I do highly recommend that if you're not a part of a membership, get a part of one, because it is so much more than astrology and human design. Like I truly see the rebirth happening for so many people when they're at an emotional and spiritual level. It's tremendous. Like people were healing. The meditations that happen impromptu, the energetic healing sessions. It's like, again, this is 6th house Scorpio. Like this is what I do. Like energy healing, and I feel like membership is what makes it economically affordable, and it feels like it's my economical responsibility to the people, Aquarius. So this can obviously go on forever and ever. At this point, your questions in the comments will help guide what, because the story will just go on and on and on and on and on. But I feel like I told you the majority of the chunks that came to me now. So with that said, hit the thumbs up, hit the likes button. I appreciate you for being here, for hearing this story. I've never told this story out loud. There's still so many facets that have not got expressed yet, but I imagine that if this was live, it would have been very different. So maybe that'll happen one day. If you want to hear this story live, if you want to be able to ask questions about this live, ask, because my experiences are for the people. They're not for a one-on-one question, kind of like right here, right now. That would be me and my transference trying to solve somebody's problem, a one person, rather than letting the people benefit from this story, which is ultimately what I came out here to do and what I had the energy to do. So hit the thumbs up and the likes button. This is your AstroShaman, Pernell Bobby. One day maybe we'll tell you about the actual shaman story, but again, like, all you gotta do is ask. Like, I'm a generator, all you gotta do is ask, and if I feel that trigger, that response, that generation, then I'll likely be there, like just happened today. Hit the thumbs up and the like button. I appreciate you for subscribing if you're brand new. We are generating an economy. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it. Exchanging goods, exchanging energy, exchanging love, exchanging finances, exchanging knowledge, wisdom, stories. All right, an economy, a spiritual economy, leveraging human design and genetic astrology. So thank you for your subscription and your thumbs up. I'll see you soon.